I survived 300 days in Hardcore Minecraft Pocket Edition, and in today's video, I plan to finally get some building done. I've been postponing this for ages because I'm actually a garbage builder, so I hope you enjoy watching me wallow in tears as I struggle placing blocks in a children's game. And with that out of the way, let's get right into the video. So we are back on day 204, and yes, it's day 204 because I had to unfortunately extend the last 100 days video to finish this amazing mob farm. I say finish, but this is actually just half of the entire farm. I don't plan to work on it this 100 days because it's expensive, so I'll probably finish it in another video. Anyways, like I said in the introduction, one of the things I want to get done this 100 days is to make a house. Now some of you may be thinking, Kilam, you're already 200 days into your hardcore world and you don't have a house yet? Well, yes, but for good reasons. You see, in my past videos, I focused a lot on progress. In my first 100 days video, I basically speedrun getting maxed out netherite armor and killing all of Minecraft's strongest mobs. And in the second one, I made a lot, and I mean a lot, of farms. And the reason for this was that I personally thought that building stuff without good tools or farms is a bit inefficient since getting the materials you need would be so much harder that way. So now that I have the necessary tools and a good number of farms near my base, I decided it was finally time I started focusing on decorating my world since it looks kinda ugly right now. And of course, the first thing I wanted to build was a house. Now here's the general idea for the build. I want my house to be on top of a hill with a cave in it that would serve as some sort of tunnel that I could use to travel through. And since I want my house to be located at my old base, there's a lot of stuff I need to get done before I can actually start building. So, from days 204 to day 105, I moved the stuff from my old base to a nearby area. This took a lot of time to do since I made sure to organize my items so that it would be easier to fix later on. But once that was finished, the next step was to make the hill. Now since the house was going to be on top of it, I needed to make sure that there was actually enough space at the summit. So I marked out the area needed for it with red wool, then started doing some terraforming for the hill. And whether you believe it or not, I went at this for way too long. I spent 12 days just destroying the current landscape and trying to make a decent hill. But it was only on day 217 that I realized that I needed to redo it all. You see, another reason as to why I never built anything in this world was that I am a terrible builder. I mean, before this video, all of the houses I ever made ended up looking like a villager's house. So of course, something had to go wrong during terraforming because I have never done it before. And if you're wondering why I needed to do this, the hill I was working on was simply too high to the point it would cover the wool and iron farm near my base. So I had to spend 3 days just tearing down the mess I just made and another 9 days redoing it. But this time, I took a slower approach to it since I obviously didn't want this video to be solely spent on terraforming. So to make sure that what I make actually turns out decent, I used a bunch of wool to not only get the dimensions of my house, but to also get the general shape of the hill. I also expanded the land near the river so that I would have more room to work with, and I even moved Brownie's grave a couple of times since it was getting in the way. But fortunately, on day 228, I made something that I was satisfied with. I mean, it wasn't the best hill I've ever seen, but it's good enough for now. So with the hill done, the next step was to make the actual house. And of course, I needed a bunch of materials for it, so on day 229, I AFK'd at my mob farm for bones and went back home to bone meal some trees. But to my surprise, I didn't have enough dark oak saplings for even a single one. So the next day, I decided to pay a visit to the woodland mansion I pillaged in my first 100 days video. I remember setting up a nether portal there before, so I went through my own portal to save some time. But upon entering hell, I was jumped by a bunch of zombie pigmen. I keep forgetting that they have a grudge against me now since, well, I have a farm for them, so I honestly should have seen this coming. Luckily, I was able to get out of there without popping my totem, but that was way too close for comfort. Anyways, on the way to the mansion, I found a new bastion that had plenty of bone blocks, gold blocks, and even enough netherite scraps and ancient debris for a single netherite ingot. After that eventful day, I arrived at the mansion on day 231 and quickly got to chopping down some dark oak wood. I made sure to get plenty of it since it was one of the main blocks for my house, and I also got a bit of oak wood while I was at it. Also, I know I said I'd take these blue fairies home one day, but I left my leads back at home, and the trip home doesn't seem to be too safe yet, so I'll leave that task for future me. Anyways, upon returning home on day 232, I used the stacks of bone meal I had to get some spruce wood, then spent days 233 to 234 getting sand and gravel for white concrete powder. Afterwards, the only block left that I needed to grind for was calcite, which could be found in geodes. Luckily, I remember there being two of them in my mine, so I spent the remainder of day 234 until day 235 excavating them. Supposedly, these two geodes should have supplied me with enough calcite for my house, but I unfortunately lost the shulker box that contained the resources from one of them, so I had to look for another geode. I honestly think it would be kinda funny if this took a long time, but I doubt it would be that difficult considering that there were just two in my mine. You know, I thought it would be kinda funny if this took a while, but this has just gone on for way too long. Finally! A geode! After mining the resources from the geode, I finally had all the materials I needed to build my house. By the way, the deep slate came from all the strip mining I did in the last 200 days video. Now this is the point of the video where I'd usually explain the design of my house while adding snippets of me building it, but I think my audience retention rate would drop if I did that, so let's just look away for a bit and voila! This definitely did not take 12 days to build, ignore that it's daytime and the day counter that would say otherwise. Anyways, let me give you a tour. I haven't made any paths yet since I don't have the materials I want for it yet, so please turn a blind eye to the grassy and uphill terrain I have going for now, and instead focus on this entirely useless hallway around the first floor of my house. If you couldn't tell already, the theme I went for was Japan because I'm a weeb. So I added this segment because I saw it in Demon Slayer. Okay? I don't know anything about Japanese architecture, so don't judge me. Anyways, if we enter the house, we are greeted by a hallway that directly leads us to a staircase and two spacious rooms. And if we were to go upstairs, you'd notice that I went for an open floor plan here since this is where I'll probably be spending most of my time. And finally, we have the terrace, which definitely does not have the exact same design as the hallway I made downstairs. Now, some of you may be wondering why the house is so empty, but that's exactly what we're going to fix next. And to kick things off, I wanted to use one of the rooms downstairs for my chests. Now, I don't have any plans on making a massive automatic storage system because it's going to be very laggy, so instead, I'm just gonna place as many chests as I could within this room. However, the room seemed a bit too bland with all the chests, so I paid a visit to my mine to grab some azalea bushes, which I used to give a bit more life to the area. Afterwards, I added an ender chest near the staircase along with a bamboo for some greenery, and speaking of greenery, I may have gone a bit ham with it since I spent the rest of the day just adding a bunch of those azalea jungle bush things around the house. But once that greenery craze was over, I spent the next day decorating the other room on the ground floor. I wanted my house to actually feel like one, so I added a small kitchen along with a dining area that used mats as chairs to force people to sit in a seiza position. Anyways, I felt like the first floor was a bit unwelcoming, so I spent a portion of day 259 adding a bunch of windows here and there just to give more dimensions to the flat walls, then got to work on the second floor. Now for this floor, I wanted it to be an area where I could both relax and work in, and so the first thing I did was to add a bunch of greenery so that it doesn't get in the way later. Next, I added a brewery and an enchanting area since these two are necessary in every Minecraft base. I also added a bed area with the colors of my Minecraft skin as the basis, then used the leftover space for something special. You see, I want this world not just to feel like it solely belongs to me, but to you guys as well. So for every video I make in this world, I will name an item after one of you guys in the comment section, which will then be stored in these chests. And since I've made two videos already, I'd like to thank Sully and Psyquick for the lovely comments. And just so you know, I'll only name an item once, meaning that the copper ingots and fireworks are off the menu already. So if you want to be named after a certain item, then I suggest you specify it when commenting on this video. And speaking of naming, I'd like to give a quick shout out to Dancing Olive who wanted to name a villager, and to BuzzShi again for accidentally misreading his name suggestion last video. And just when my naming spree was about to end, I found a rabbit that got stuck under the table of my brewing area and just couldn't resist the opportunity. So I named it the Desk Rabbit and wanted to see how long it'll be stuck there for. Anyways, once that naming spree was done, I decided it was finally time to get some item sorting done. Now, unlike Rian, I'm actually pretty particular about organizing my items, so I spent a solid 7 days doing so. I just really didn't want a chess monster to appear in this world. So with that out of the way, I wanted to continue working on my house, specifically the pathways leading to it. And for this project, I wanted to use mud-based blocks for it, so I visited a nearby mangrove swamp to grab an entire shulker box worth of it, then used it to craft packed mud for the paths and mud bricks for the outline. And after a tiring 3 days, I finally finished the path leading to my base. And I honestly just loved how it turned out since it just added another layer to the build. Now that that was done, the last thing left to do was to make the cave underneath my house. And for this cave, I wanted it to be split into a lush and dripstone biome. So I began the project on day 271, making a small river inside the cave that would serve as a divisor for the two sections. Then spent the next day moving the network farm, the cocoa bean farm, some livestock, and a few llamas that were trying to play Among Us. Afterwards, I spent the next 2.5 days outlining the cave itself and the path within it, then filled the path with the same packed mud and mud brick combo. And while the place was starting to look better with the path, we were nowhere near done just yet since a cave is a space found underground. So the remainder of day 274 to day 276 were spent placing stone to make the walls and ceiling of the cave. And I got to say, throughout this video, I've come to admire builders more and more. I know I'm breaking out of character right now, but as someone who used to be a PvPer, I always thought that building wasn't actually that hard. Of course, there were some people that I thought were just godly at their craft, but I don't think I ever gave them as much credit as they deserved. I thought I could build as well as or even better than a cookie goddess addiction, but when I actually gave building a try, I realized how ignorant those remarks were. I mean, I struggled to make a simple hill, and now I'm struggling to make a simple cave. This was a wonderful experience that allowed me to truly appreciate builders and give them the proper respect they deserve. Anyways, I'm going a bit off track, so back to building the cave. Like I said earlier, I wanted to divide the cave into a lush and dripstone biome, but I was lacking a few blocks from them. For the lush cave, I already had a bunch of moss, azalea, and spore blossoms from my previous chips, but I needed more clay, glowberries, and drip leaves for the build, so I spent the rest of day 276 gathering said items. As for the dripstone cave blocks, I practically had none of them on hand, so I had to spend days 277 to 278 collecting dripstone and some ores for more decoration. But once all that was done, I began work on the cave by starting with the lush area, which was honestly a simple process. I simply placed moss everywhere, then bone mealed them to spread them out even further. And to add to the lush cave vibe, I added a clay area with a bunch of drip leaves and water, then finished things off by sprinkling some glowberries and spore blossoms on the ceiling. Next up was the dripstone section. I needed a fair bit of stone for it, so I paid a visit to my iron farm to make my very first tier 4 beacon. And I mean my very first one in my entire career as a Minecraft player. I find it quite funny how I didn't do this earlier considering the amount of space I cleared out in my last video, but what's done is done. So after collecting the needed stone, I replaced the grass floor with stone, then followed a similar process as the lush cave. I spammed dripstone and dripstone blocks everywhere, placed a few ores here and there to make it more realistic, then used a bunch of chains and lamps for lighting. And with that, the cave was officially done on day 281, and I honestly love how it turned out. I remember thinking that building stuff out of natural biomes was a bit basic, but after trying it out, I think I can understand why it's used in builds so frequently. There's just a part of building biomes that just captures the true beauty of Minecraft and conveys the player's passion for the game in their builds. But enough artistic talk because while the interior of the cave was done, the same can't be said for the exterior. The four entrances into the cave were rough at best, so I spent the entirety of day 282 just making them look a bit more natural and better looking. And with that, after almost 300 days in this world, I finally have a place that I can call home. And while I wanted to just sit back and relax at this point, I wanted to use the remaining days to get a bit of progress done. So from days 283 to 285, I got to work on adding a bamboo farm below my wool farm. I went with a similar design as the sugarcane farm I made last time, so it wasn't too hard to do. I also didn't make it as big as a sugarcane farm since the only thing I really needed bamboo for was scaffolding. But once that was finished, the next thing I wanted to get done was a tier 4 emerald beacon. This wasn't going to be too hard of a task since I had a ton of books from raiding the woodland mansion in my first 100 days video. Not to mention that I have a ton of cured librarians that trade 1 emerald for 1 book. The only thing that really got in my way was a trading cooldown, so I used that time to do a bit of terraforming since the area around my base just looks really messy from all the builds I made. Once I had all the necessary emeralds, the only thing left I needed to get was a beacon. I already had 2 wither skulls on me, so all I needed was 1 more, and after a few embarrassing falls, I was able to get my wither skull and head back home. Once I was home, I made a few preparations, then used the same strategy I used in my first 100 days video. I spawned it on the ground, shot it until it got to half health, got rid of the wither skeletons that it spawned, drank some potions, then went in for the kill. I'll be honest with this and say that things didn't really go according to plan. The wither was causing much more lag than last time, which made it a bit hard to follow, but in the end I was able to take it down with little to no difficulty. I also gathered the blocks that appeared from the aftermath of our battle, and got a wither skull from one of the skeletons it spawned, which I found hilarious since it made me imagine beheading the wither for one of its heads. With the nether star I got, I quickly made it into a beacon and set it up near my iron farm, and with the haste effect, I got to work on flattening the surrounding area since I wanted to expand here in the future. I also spent day 293 cleaning up the area by replacing the stone floor with grass and spamming the area with torches. My tools were a bit beat up from all the terraforming I did, so I paid a quick visit to my gold farm to mend my tools, then got to work on my next task, which was a sorting system for my mob farm. I needed a ton of wood for the hoppers and chests, so I spent some time chopping down some spruce trees, then went to the mob farm to get to work. I won't explain how this works since I'm not a redstone expert, but the link to the tutorial will be in the description. And once that was finished, I did a good 25-minute AFK session to test out the storage system's performance, and I'm glad to say it is working really well. The only issue I could see was that the overflow chests I installed were getting filled up way faster than I anticipated, but since I didn't have a lot of time left, I decided to leave that for future me to handle. Now, at this point, there really wasn't much left I could do. There wasn't enough time for me to make any of the major farms I need, and I'm sure that you guys have had enough of me terraforming and building for this video. So I spent these last 3 days working on a small egg farm for wither roses in the future. In hindsight, I probably should have done this earlier considering that I've already fought 2 withers, but they're not too hard to fight now anyway, so it's not a big deal. It's a pretty simple farm where I just gather a bunch of chickens in one place and have a hopper collect all their eggs. But while I'm doing this, I just wanted to thank everyone watching this video right now. While editing this video, I hit 1,000 subscribers, which just feels so surreal to me. I honestly can't believe there are 1,000 people out there willing to subscribe to me despite my awful upload schedule. And while college is one of the biggest reasons for it, I think I myself am at fault for it too. During the 5 months I was gone, I have been thinking a lot about my future. Because while I am a YouTuber, I'm also a freshman in college taking an engineering course. And to me, I wasn't sure which of the two paths I should dedicate my time to. This video came out way past the time I initially planned for it to because of my indecisiveness. And while I can't say I fully resolved that issue, I just want to reassure you guys that I'm not gonna quit without letting you guys know. So with that, I would like to thank everyone once again for your support and to see you again in the next 100 days video.